You know, from the fuel that runs our cars to the food we eat for dinner, our lives are just completely shaped by biological resources. So in this explainer, we're going to uncover some of the deep and often invisible connections between the living planet and our day-to-day world. Let's dive in. Let's start with this really powerful idea from the naturalist John Muir. He wrote this over 100 years ago, but it just perfectly nails the big idea we're talking about today, that these wild, natural systems hold a deep, fundamental value for every single one of us. This really sets the stage for why all of this matters so much. So, here's our game plan. We're going to start big, looking at the entire biosphere. Then, we'll zoom into wilderness areas. From there, we'll go microscopic and talk about genetic diversity, and then see how that all connects to how we produce our food. And finally, we'll take a trip through deep time before we wrap it all up with the key takeaways. Okay, so let's begin with the most fundamental concept of all. And that's the idea that human life isn't somehow separate from nature. We're completely and totally intertwined with the living world all around us. And this is really the bottom line. Our food, our clean water, even our safety, it's all directly tied to the health of the planet's biological systems. What happens in some faraway forest or ocean doesn't just stay there. It has a real impact on our lives. So that brings us to a bigger way of thinking about conservation. You know, it's not just about protecting cute animals in a park somewhere. It's really about protecting the processes, the systems that are constantly working to purify our water, recycle nutrients, and maintain the very soil we need to grow our food. It's incredibly practical and absolutely essential. All right, so let's make our first stop on this journey of scale, these large, wild ecosystems. But what does it even mean for a place to be a wilderness? Well, you might be surprised to learn that wilderness isn't just some poetic idea. It has a real, official definition from the U.S. Wilderness Act of 1964. The whole point is that these are places where nature is in the driver's seat, where natural processes are the dominant force, not human activity. So how much land are we actually talking about? Well, in the United States alone, that number is 100 million acres. 100 million! Just to put that in perspective for you, over half of that is in Alaska, and most of the rest is out in the western states. So why go to all this trouble to protect these places? Well, the reasons are huge. You've got deep cultural connections, massive economic value from things like tourism and recreation, but maybe the most important reasons are ecological. These areas are powerhouses that maintain diversity, protect our water sources, help clean the air, and on top of all that, they're basically living laboratories for science. Okay, get ready for a big shift in perspective. We're about to zoom way, way in, from these vast ecosystems all the way down to the microscopic level of genes, the things that hold the code for all life on Earth. Now, let's clear something up, because these two terms can be a little tricky. Ecosystem diversity is about the variety among different species. Think lions, zebras, and giraffes all living on the savanna. But genetic diversity is the variety within a single species, like all the different patterns and colors you'd see in a single pack of wolves. I absolutely love this analogy. Think of a species collection of genes as its toolkit. The more different tools it has, meaning the more genetic variation, the better prepared it is to handle whatever comes its way, whether that's a new disease, a change in the climate, or anything else. It's literally the raw material for survival. So, how does a species lose those vital tools? Well, it often starts when a population gets really small. That can lead to inbreeding, and that, in turn, can cause something called genetic drift, which is basically just a random lottery where certain genetic traits can disappear from the population by pure chance. The result is that the entire population becomes more uniform and way, way more vulnerable. And here's where this concept lands right on our dinner table. A lot of our modern crops have been bred to be genetically identical. A monoculture. That's great for yield, but if a new pest or disease shows up that this one variety is weak against, it can wipe out the entire harvest. That's why wild relatives of these plants are so critical. They're like a genetic library holding all these forgotten traits for resistance that we can breed back into our food supply to keep it safe. So that's a perfect lead into our next section. How do we actually go about feeding billions of people on this planet? Let's connect that idea of diversity directly to what you eat. Just take a look at this. It's honestly pretty staggering. I mean, there are thousands of edible plants out there in the world, but the vast majority of calories that humanity consumes comes from just 4 main crops: wheat, rice, corn, and potatoes. It just goes to show you how much we rely on a very, very narrow agricultural base. So how do we grow all this food? Well, you can basically break it down into two different playbooks. On one hand, you've got industrialized agriculture. You see this mostly in developed countries. It uses tons of fertilizer, fuel, and water to grow just one crop, a monoculture, to sell for profit. Then, on the other hand, you have traditional agriculture, which is more common in developing countries. It uses way fewer inputs, and the goal is usually to feed a family or a local community. And what about food from the ocean? Well, there are a few big methods for commercial fishing. You've got trawlers that drag huge nets across the ocean floor. Others use enormous per-scene nets to surround whole schools of fish. And drift nets just hang in the water like giant curtains. But here's the key thing. All of these methods have one massive shared problem. They catch and kill huge numbers of animals they weren't even trying to catch. That's a problem we call bycatch. Okay, now we're going to pull the camera way back. We're going to become geologists for a second and look across millions of years of time to see how ancient life itself turned into some of our most critical resources today. The story of how we get oil and gas is just incredible, and it's probably not what you think. It doesn't come from dinosaurs. It actually comes from trillions and trillions of microscopic marine organisms, like plankton. When they died, they sank to the bottom of the ocean, got buried, and then, over millions of years, they were slowly cooked by the Earth's heat and pressure into the oil we use today. And get this, it's not just fuel. Even something as solid as a rock can come from living things. Take limestone, for example. It's used to make everything from cement to chalk. And what is it? It's just the compacted shells and skeletons of countless ancient marine creatures. Life literally builds the planet beneath our feet. All right, we have covered a ton of ground, from entire ecosystems down to individual genes and back out to geologic time. So let's boil it all down to the key concepts, the stuff you'll definitely want to remember from all this. Okay, here are the big ideas. Number one, conservation is about protecting the whole system, not just individual species. Two, wilderness isn't just pretty, it has huge ecological, economic, and cultural value. Three, genetic diversity is the essential toolbox for survival, and it's especially critical for our food. Four, we use two very different systems to feed the world, industrialized and traditional. And finally, number five, remember that some of our most important resources like oil and limestone are just the transformed remains of ancient life. And that leaves us with a final, really big question, doesn't it? Our entire modern world is powered by sunlight that was captured by tiny organisms millions of years ago. So, knowing that, how are we going to power the next chapter of human history? It's a huge challenge and one that's going to define our future. Thanks for joining this explainer.